And just like that, it's saying we are live and recording, and everything should be good. I'm about to bring my guest up here in just a minute. I just want to have a disclaimer real quick. If you see me waving like this, I'm not being attacked by bees, but there's a fly in my studio, and it's been here for 2 days. And me and this fly, he only bothers me when I'm recording. And I think it's on purpose. I just don't know if he doesn't like my podcast or what, but I just need everybody to know, like, see, it's flying right now. Don't freak out. I'm not having an episode, but I'm refusing to let the fly get any studio or airtime on this podcast. I'm super happy to have this guest. She was actually referred to me as a possible guest through my sister, and I think they knew each other through work a little bit. But she's an author. She owns her own counseling service. I'll let her tell you more about who she is and what she does when she comes up. But her name is Melissa McDaniel. Let me take this off the screen. There it goes. I think she went out and bought a new mic for this too. 3, 2, 1. How are you doing today, Melissa?
I am doing great. How do I sound?
You
with this
sound
new
fantastic.
mic? Thank you.
Fantastic.
I'm so excited about
Now,
this
did you
mic.
get the Yeti like we suggested?
I did, yes.
It works out lovely. Now, we will say that when you first came on, and I've had the same problem. There was a little bit of a technical issue, but that happens with everybody on a first podcast.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad I'm not the first one.
Have
But
you
yes, I thought it was like hooked up this entire time.
have you thought of doing your own podcast or something like that? Has that come across your plate?
I have thought of it, or not technically my own, but I love to be on other people's
Yeah.
podcast, and then maybe my own in the future.
Yeah, here's what's going to happen. It happens to everybody I bring on that's got a career like you, that's your own business, right? You're going to do one or two. It's going to be uncomfortable. Then all of a sudden you're going to hit your stride and you're going to go, yeah, you're going to get the itch. You're going to I'm going to do my own podcast. And then I'll be a guest on your podcast.
I'm so technically challenged. That's why
The
So
good thing is you have everything you need right now. There,
oh,
you're
great.
done.
That's
You're
good.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Do me a favor. Tell everybody the name of your business, but we will get into the book in just a little bit. Tell everybody the name of your business and what you do inside that business. That'll be some good jumping off points for us.
Okay. So my name is Melissa McDaniel, and I own Shepherd Way Counseling Associates. And as of May, this is my 18th year now in business. I never had any plan to own my own business. So it's only by God's grace that I've been able to keep the doors open for that long. And a lot of people ask if, it's a Christian agency. I am a Christian. However, the name is actually derived from, it's my maiden name. And my mom came up with Shepherd Way. So that's where the name came from.
Yeah, I thought it had the religious connotation too when I saw it and looked it up. So very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always you didn't have private practice all the time? You started off working for the court system or how did you get into this?
Well, actually, I was working with, when I was getting my master's, I moved to Chattanooga. I got my education from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And so working with your sister basically as a case manager / social worker with Hamilton County CSA.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I finished up the master's there. The first job that I took when I moved back, because I always knew that I wanted to, well, no, I wouldn't say I always knew that I wanted to come back home. After I got pregnant, then married, we knew that we wanted to raise our child in Belmont. And so the first job that I got was as a rape crisis coordinator of Gaston County. And so I worked with victims. And then a lot of my book is about, or a key piece of my book is about me being sexually assaulted at the age of 11. And so it wasn't my plan my plan was to take whatever job I get first because I wanted to become licensed. And so I had my master's, but I wasn't licensed yet. And the Gaston County United Way was willing to, I got a job where I could be supervised, and that was as the rape crisis counselor.
So there's so many different ways I want to take that, but you've already kind of dropped the starting point, I guess, of the conversation. We'll revisit some of the educational stuff and what got you in from working with the community like that into your own practice. But I don't think we can just gloss over the fact that your journey began really at 11 in this process, being broken and then to the healing side or the continual process of being healed. Do you, as much as you're comfortable sharing, what was the circumstances when you were 11 years old that kind of started this journey?
Okay. So I was 11. I have an older brother, and he was on a 13-year-old AAU basketball team, and they had won in the area and were traveling to championship games in Indianapolis. And so we were there, and I don't know much about AAU basketball, but you don't know many people. I mean, it's people from all over.
Yeah.
So a family that my parents had hung out with or whatever, and I had that 13-year-old had a younger sister, and so that's who I hung out with. Well, they invited us for dinner one evening in their hotel room, and we had nice hotel rooms too, like big kitchens and dining rooms and bedrooms. And so anyway, she had the little girl that I used to hang out with asked if I wanted ask my parent, and I can hear her like asking my mom, can she stay over? And I didn't want to stay over. I had my own bed, but my mom wasn't in a position where she can see me, like, and so even the other kid's mom was like talking my mom into it. We have an air mattress. They can sleep in here. It'll be fun, and so my mom's hesitated, but was like, well, okay. And actually, what no one knew at the time either, that girl's brother had someone spending the night, and then later somebody stopped by the room that was on the team, and he knew all of us were staying, so he stayed.
I got to be honest. You're not even halfway through your story, and the hair on the back of my neck as a dad is already standing up, and I'm like, okay, all my fears are about to come true right now, and that's a terrifying thing. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm listening with
So I
a.
won't be too detailed,
Yeah,
but
it's okay. This is your story. You do what you need.
so anyway, my parents leave, my brother left, and then by that time I was like, okay, yeah, this will be fun. Me and her will, have a good time. The air mattress was blown up. Well, it was all 5 of us in that room. So there were 3 guys and 2 girls. I had never done anything sexual whatsoever. Kiss, like
Yeah.
nothing. And then I kind of knew her brother, kind of. The one that actually sexually assaulted me, I did not know. I had seen him, I had heard he had been in some trouble, and things like that, but I did not know him at all. And anyway, he had came over and asked in the middle of the night, after the girl that I was spending the night with, her stomach started hurting in the middle of the night. So she got up and left the room and went to sleep with her mother. So I'm left in a room with 3 other guys, and it's pitch black. And I don't know if the other 2 guys in the room ever know like what went on or what happened. And but anyway, one of the guys came over and asked if he could lay his head he was like, I want to plug my jam box. Remember jam boxes?
Yeah, absolutely. All you need is
You know?
13 batteries. Yeah.
And I felt uncomfortable immediately because again, someone that you don't know, like in your space or whatever, but then, raised always to be nice and kind and
Light.
yeah, I just wasn't prepared like for the situation or whatever. And he asked if he could plug his jam box in. There wasn't a plug over there, and he wanted to plug his jam, and he was whispering, and supposedly other people were asleep. And I faked like I was asleep initially. And he plugged his jam box in, laid his head at the end of the blow up mattress, and then he started rubbing my legs. And immediately I got my feet and like put it on his shoulders and like pushed him down. And then he just came up. And anyway, I was sexually assaulted. And even to this day, I can't tell you how long that it went on. And like he was even saying, like, because when I was younger, my dad used to work out all the time. and people called him the Hulk. Like, he was really fit and stuff. And he kept saying, "Are you going to tell your dad? Are you going to?" And in my mind, absolutely, you're going to get in trouble, buddy. You know,
Yes.
I was going to tell my parents, and but anyway, so eventually I got enough courage to run out of the room, run up the stairs, go to, and I was terrified, even like running up the stairs, like hoping I'm not going to see anybody else that's going to, because it's in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
at this point. And so I knock on our door. Thankfully, I knew how to get to our hotel room. And my dad answers, and I just knew they were going to know, because I felt so dirty and traumatized. And he answered the door, and he was like, and it was in the middle of the night, so his eyes are, the room's dark, but the hall light is lit. And he was like, "Oh, you're homesick. Come on in, get in bed," and just didn't say anything. And I just walked in thinking, "Oh my gosh, nobody knows, nobody can tell." And I didn't sleep that night, but yeah, so that's how that went down.
I've got a friend that wrote a book. Her name is Lisa Crawford, and her experiences are probably, of course, they're all different and unique to but she had the same kind of experience. And she wrote a book called Silent Screams,
Mm.
and basically it was around the why people should know. Like and this in your brain, you're screaming, wanting to tell them, and yet it doesn't come out. So that's kind of where the tragedy, the trauma that started your journey.
And I didn't tell.
Mhm.
The next day, I went to the championship game. Was terrified. I saw my parents and other people like clapping and yelling for this individual. They did lose the game, and so we took a long car ride home from Indianapolis, and I just replayed it constantly. Like, and that's where the shame sets in. Like, you should have said something. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you get up sooner? Why didn't you run out sooner?
So how in of course, we just don't have time to go through this chronologically year by year, but was there moments you told your parents eventually down the road? Because I've not read the book, but is it, or was that something they didn't find out till you
Yeah.
came out later? How did
So
they find out?
eventually, so then, fast forward to high school, I'm dating someone and had been dating someone that they did not care for. Um, and at that time, because they were of a different race, and, we were in an argument, and my mom was yelling, like, "Why are you like this? Why are you doing this to us?" And I remember just screaming out, like, "I don't know, maybe because I was sexually abused." Like, and then she thought, she was like, "No, you weren't." Like, and then I told her, and she didn't know to believe me or not. Um,
Mm,
and that didn't even really respond. But I had lied by that point because I was in a relationship that they didn't approve of. And so there were plenty of times that I had lied.
yeah, yeah,
So they're like, "Is she just saying this?" And then what do we always hear? "Well, why didn't you speak up then? Why haven't you?"
yeah. And so, was there ever a moment, or as part of that healing, the reconciliation with your parents on that as well, on that particular, did they ever come around to believe in you? Is that, or is that
That's a
something
good
you?
question. Well, I think there was one time I was talking about it at our kitchen table, and this is after I was married to my husband, who is Black,
Mhm.
that they do love and accept now.
Of course they do.
Part of the, you know, Cinderella story.
But real quick, before you talk about sitting around that table, this is what I'm finding as I get older. The journey of life is full of irony and full of opportunities to growth. Of course they do.
Mhm.
Of course, go back 30 years, they may have said, "That's not the journey I want my daughter to go on," but that's the journey my daughter went on. And a parent, and speaking as a parent now, and you've got a child, I will end up loving my child because I love my child, and I'll support their decisions. And I've never been faced with the journey they're taking before. It's like it's all new to us. We think we know what we would do until we're in the situation, and then we're like, I'm not going to stop loving my kid. We may have some arguments down the road, but of course they love and
Right.
support. Yeah. It
So
takes them a journey too, right?
yes. So
Yeah.
we're sitting at the table, and it is only my mom, not my dad, but I remember it being my mom, my husband, and I. And for some reason, I was talking specifically about the sexual abuse, and I was being detailed of, like what happened. And I don't know why we were talking about that day. And I'm going to tell you my response, and I'm also going to say that I wouldn't say this was a traumatic response. Obviously, it's not something that I would recommend, but I recognize it now, or self-aware that it was part of the trauma. But so as I'm telling the story, my mom was like, and my mom is a wonderful, amazing human being. So, I use her in a lot of my examples. But oftentimes throughout my childhood, neither I or her responded in a healthy manner. But anyway, so I'm telling it, and she was like, stop. I can't hear this. I cannot, I do not want to hear it. I can't. And that flew all over me. I hit my hands on the table and I stood up, and I mean, I could cry.
Yeah.
I said, "You are my mother, and
Mm,
I need you to hear what happened to me."
mm.
And she did, but it was because of her own guilt
Yeah.
of letting
Yeah.
me stay,
Yeah, of course.
which she had no clue. And if she would have thought anything like that would have happened, she would have absolutely said no.
Yeah. As a as a parent, and I cannot relate to that conversation, but I can relate to the feeling of guilt and shame, decisions we make, talking to people the way we shouldn't, sometimes acting in ways we shouldn't that are completely inappropriate. I shouldn't have treated somebody that way. I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have lost my temper. Of course, the protection, a layer of protection we put between me and you as my child is I'm guilty too. I don't know how to process my pain. How can I help my child? I'm the one that feels like it was my fault probably to
Mhm.
some degree, right?
Yes.
Did she ever express that to you?
Um, yes, and then exact when she saw, like, my reaction and
Well, she verbalized that then. Okay,
Mhm.
good. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
What was the next step after that? Was there hugs? At some
Yeah,
point, were there hugs? Good.
yes. Mhm.
Good.
Definitely. Mhm. But, if you haven't been through an experience, you don't understand. I mean, you can hear other people, but,
Yeah.
how or see how it's continuing to affect them.
I'm imagining this, so I'm gonna say it to you, and since this is your experience, you can actually tell me if my assumption is correct. Every part of your day is somehow, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, carries a little bit of that debris from the trauma with it. I mean, I would imagine it affects all your decisions. Of course, your trust in people, what you do with your life. I mean, it changes the course of where you're at, and almost every little thing you do during the day is somehow tinged with that trauma, I would think.
Mhm. Yeah, especially subconsciously.
And
Um,
as a teenager, for the love of God, you got all these hormones going through you, and some of it's normal, some of it's now you don't know, is that normal? Should I be thinking this? Am I tainted? Was I broken? All of that crap. Being a teenager is hard enough without the trauma like that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then, by that time I was sitting at the table having that conversation, I was in my 20s. So
Oh,
it was,
wow.
and that happened when I was 11.
Mm.
So that's like carrying a lot of that on my own for a lot
Yeah.
of years.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a question, but I told you this is the reason we're podcasting. We don't this part doesn't have to make it, which is fine. How did the conversation eventually go with your dad?
About the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
We've never had a detailed conversation. He's
Mhm.
read my book. That is the first time that and he hasn't asked me any questions. I
Mhm.
know even like for my brother, like he knew, but he didn't know the details.
Mhm.
And my brother, when I told him, about the book, and he was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it, talking about that part. But he has. Um, and he hasn't asked me. And that's the thing. No one, since the book has come out, I've had wonderful reviews. I've had a lot of people say, congratulations, but nobody has asked me in depth questions about it.
So, do you want them to? Do you want your dad to sit down and have questions? Is there a conversation? And this is. I feel like now we're just having this isn't a podcast anymore. I feel like I'm asking you personal questions. Is it a conversation you would like to have with your dad and your brother?
Right. No, not no. I
Okay.
think the book, I think for
Yeah.
and my brother, I'm so grateful that they both have read it,
I'm
and
a dad of a girl, and I'll just be honest with you. I don't know if I could read that without going to jail. And and
mhm,
and and I'm listening to that part of it, and I don't know how I would react, but I do understand of them reading it and loving you, but I don't know if I'd ask questions 'cause I don't know what questions I would ask, and I don't wanna hurt my daughter further. So, you
right.
know.
And then, immediately, like I did say that I was in when it was initially started, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell." But, by the time when, again, the door was opened, couldn't clearly you don't I felt like I had victim on my forehead because I was
Yeah.
so, like, traumatized, like, something just completely changed my life,
Mhm.
and you couldn't see it. And, but then I know my dad has had a temper in the past, and I'm very aware of that. And
Yeah.
he's always told me, you let me know if anybody hurts you. I'll
Uh,
take care of it. And I always tell men now when or I'll hear men say that, and I'm like, please don't tell your daughters that, but he made it seem like he's going to take care of it, and I don't want my dad going to jail. You know, my dad knew where that room was because we had dinner there.
yeah. Yeah, so you just hit a nerve with me because one of the things I do tell my daughter on the only added to that is I always tell them, and I've tried to do this in practice. There are things that will require me to act, and I always do the machismo thing. But and when they know me by now, my first reaction is never really physical violence, but things that you tell me may require action. But
Mhm.
the first initial thing I need you to know is whatever you bring to me, let's just talk. I just want to hear. And if you say to me, don't, and there's people in my life right now who've asked me not to do things based off what they've told me, and I've lived up to that. It ain't easy. Makes me hit the heavy bag a lot more. But they need to they need to feel like there's a safe place. And so I completely understand what your dad was saying to you though. And it came with good intentions.
Right. It came with good intentions, but
We
I
love
also
our little
I had
girls.
seen him here and there lose his temper,
Yeah.
and he is my hero. Love
Oh,
both of my parents to death, but the last thing I would want, and I honestly don't know if he would have done the right thing and picked up the phone and
yeah.
well, I don't know that that would be the right thing
You
too.
just don't know what he would do. That's it.
Whatever, yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
know, or
11-year-old.
going to that room and being like, "Who the heck in," and then you've got 3 people that could be, um, so yeah.
So, is part of your journey the healing not only from what happened to you and that individual, but the healing with your family? I mean, is that part of this journey? They didn't see it on my face. Was there part of you that was a little angry at mom and dad? Like, why can't you read this? Why can't you see? Because as an 11-year-old kid, you're an immature brain. I would have stored that in you should know, damn it. You know,
Right. No,
good.
the way how I have always responded, which can be a good thing and not such a good thing at times, but I never blamed even the individual that did it. Um, like, I understood that he had behavioral problems. Like, I had heard that, like, even before.
Wow.
So it's like I can have an understanding of that, but then so it was the self blame
Yeah.
often that, why couldn't you protect yourself? Why didn't you run out sooner? Or, even if we go into the relationship in high school, it ended up being an abusive relationship, which it did not start out like that, which normally they don't, of course.
Right.
But I stayed longer because I was trying to prove a point, you know. And again, so the self-blame, again, not even on them, but
Right.
of my own decisions.
And I'm assuming at some point in time, this is why you took the career path you did and went into the education you did. Was that part? Was that one of those things you didn't know why really?
Right. No, like, well, actually, and I'm not in my book, basically, I went to 2 weeks of my senior year. And then my ex came into the classroom and threatened me that he was going to kill me if he saw me around, and was like kicking my feet and moving my desk. And the principal had heard about it. I had left the classroom and left. And anyway, so I was the next day, my parents and I were called to the school, and I was basically dismissed from school. They told me that I could not return because I was it was a safety issue for the other students. If he didn't kill or shoot me, I was on the cheerleading squad. We had a game, coming up, and they said it was, even though it was public property, they said. So they technically, even though he was going to be dismissed from school too, that he could show up. And yeah. So anyway, I ended up miraculously in college. And I had not even filled out a college application ever. And and I was 16 at the time. I was getting ready to turn 17 that September. And so, yeah, there's been, like, God has orchestrated.
So, well, real quick,
I wish I would say I'm smart enough to make this such a beautiful story at the ending, but I'm not.
how did the school find you? Had the college find you? Did you eventually apply? Did somebody send you a
So, like, that day when I was dismissed from school, well, when I was told that I couldn't come back anymore. I'd only been, again, I was 2 weeks my senior year. And the principal at the time encouraged that I complete my degree at the local community college, that I could just complete my high school degree there. My parents at that time were concerned about my safety, because I had been, and at that time they were aware I had been abused by him. And now I was dating someone else, but again, it was him that came into the classroom and threatened he was going to end my life if he saw me again. So their plan was for me to go live with my mother's first cousin in Texas, and she had agreed. So I get home that day learning I can't go back to my high school, who I've been in this community my entire life, went to school with all these people, excited about your senior year because that's what you work for, and then told I couldn't return. And then my mom's talking about, and thankfully my aunt, her cousin, was going to let me come.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, come on. And I was like, I don't want to go to Texas. So my brother, I have an 18-month-old brother who's 18 months older than I am. Yeah. And he was going to Western Carolina. And my dad thought to call the chancellor and tell him the story and ask if there was any high school programs so that I could come up there. And so my dad did. Initially, it was probably a 10-minute conversation. The chancellor heard him and basically said, I hate that you're having to deal with this, but no, actually we would have the same issue here. If she's in that much danger, then the individual could come here, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, after he hung up, it was probably like 10 minutes later, and the chancellor called our house back and said, I've thought about it, and I have a daughter about her same age, and I would want somebody to help me. And so if you bring her up here, we'll test her today. So the same day I got kicked out of high school, I'm being carried 2.5 hours to go take some test. I don't even remember taking the test. But if I did okay,
right,
they would start me. And college had already been in for like a month. And so then when I get in, and so we show up at my brother knows none of this. We show up at his dorm, and they're like, she's coming here now. And he's like, what?
How'd that work? He's probably like, what? How'd that happen?
Right. Miracle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, and I feel like we might end up having to have 2 or 3 podcasts because we're only to college and we got about 15 or 20 minutes left. So, uh, how did so you go to college, God worked the miracle of getting you in there. You start pursuing this degree. Again, when did you make the determination, I want to go into this
When I
field?
first took, because initially when I started classes, I was in my mind like I was 16. Most of these people were like 18 or 19. I'm in their class and stuff. And you take your general ed classes. So I was in an English class. And again, I'm already a month behind. And I feel like these people are so much older and smarter than I am. And, feeling very small and the troubled girl, like in the
Yeah.
class or whatever. But I think it was the next semester, and I started a psychology class, like Psychology 101, and it was all about human behavior, and I absolutely loved it.
Mm.
Um, and I knew I was like, I want to do something with psychology. But even then, I had no clue, like, even with my master's, like, what I specifically wanted to do.
Well, and this might be where chronologically we skip ahead to kind of more what you're doing now.
Mhm.
And because I want to make sure we talk about some of the things you do now. And we're going to end this when everybody's listening. Just know that we're going to end it with I'm going to give you the floor to give advice to people who may be living in that pain that you were in between 11 and 20, whenever you hit your hands on the table and said, dad gum, somebody listen. But before we talk about what you do now, I have a question about writing. I'm very intrigued by authors, people who write books. When you wrote the book, do you have a writing process? Do you sit down every day intentionally? Was it as it came? Did you enjoy the writing process? Was it a form of therapy for you all over again?
It was definitely a form of therapy. However, I had to have a lot of help. I definitely do not take credit for, because there was so much that happened in my life. I initially was going to, I did a book proposal and was going to, like, try to find an agent or whatever. And so I had found someone that I thought was going to take my book proposal and make it great so that I could, submit it to different agents. Well, anyway, so I was excited about that. Da, 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 da. I get this book proposal back, and this is like over 3 years ago or whatever. And basically, it was a book proposal recommendation evaluation. And basically, it was like, you're not a strong enough writer.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, like, you're so excited. I've done all this work, you know, um, have all these plans. And I was like, what, you may want to take these courses or da, da, da. And I'm thinking, I ain't got time to take no courses. I just need somebody to help me get this story together, you know? Um, and anyway, and immediately my initial feeling was freaking,
Yeah.
I give up, like, tried, whatever. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to find somebody else.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was like, I'll get a ghostwriter to help me write the story. And I found this woman, um, Becky Flansburgh. She's wonderful, does lots of other things, but is a ghostwriter. And she and I have actually never met in person, just through email and like virtual and stuff. And so I would send her my stories, and she was able, it was like God allowed her to see exactly what he was trying to share as well. And
Mm.
then even she recommended the editor, who even was able to narrow it down even further to make it the story technically about God and race.
Isn't that really odd though? How the editing process? Every time I've talked to an author, and I've written stuff, but I've written more poems and stuff. I've never written anything of length. Isn't it odd? The editing process, I found, it can be very trying for somebody when it's your story and somebody's coming along going, "We're cutting that," and you're like, "But that's like when you sell your house and you go, well, that's really That's a cool feature of my house. Why don't people want to pay more for it? It's like, yeah, it's yours, but you painted the room mauve. Nobody else likes the color, you know? And so that's really odd. Every time I've talked to an author, the editing process can be kind of painful.
Right, but for me, it was so beautiful because that's one of my problems is having so much information that I want to share. I can't tailor it down. And them two were like able to. And they were also with like there were things that if it was cut and I was like, this has to be in there, you know, and they listened and yeah, it ended
Well,
up.
that's that third party. It's that perspective. They're not attached emotionally to the story, so they're coming at it probably from a reader and from a communication process, which I think is you
And
need that.
education background and writing and all that other
Yeah,
stuff, and
yeah.
better at grammar than I
I'll
am.
throw punctuation around. So just so you know, I was a journalism major my first year in school, and my journalism advisor came to me and goes, "You need to go into communications. You're very creative. You're super creative. This is way before computers, the '80s, right?" He goes, "Dude, you have no idea about. I don't know how your punctuation. You're just throwing semicolons in there like you're feeding the ducks. You know, you got commas everywhere." I'm like, I don't know. So somebody told me, and just so you kind of feel good about this, I was told that I write commercials a lot. I write like people talk,
Mm,
not like people read. And there is a difference. I am very good at writing in such a way. If you're reading it, it feels like we're having a conversation.
mm,
But if you're reading it for grammar and to follow the flow of a theme, and you're going to get frustrated with me really quick.
mhm.
And so I'm glad you found the people that God brought into your life. So what do you do now? So we're gonna because I want to take the next few minutes. You've gone through the process. You got your master's. You worked for the community for a little while. Then you start your own practice. So by the way, do you like being a business owner?
I love it. There's still so much I need to learn.
I was going to ask. That's what I
Yeah,
do. I do some business
it
coaching. Do you like it?
oh, yes, I do. I love it, but there's so much more to it. I mean, as far as I'm a really good therapist. I've God has allowed me to keep, but there I wish I have already like somehow expanded, you know, and if I knew or understood more about business,
Mhm.
because I've never taken out a loan, a business loan or anything. God has sustained me, and
Wow.
I say that, but that's not a good thing if you're a business owner and you're wanting to expand.
Yeah.
Like I need, you know, more passive income
You need some
rather than
capital.
earned, and yeah. So it's and if you don't have the financial knowledge of knowing how to do that, then that has kept me smaller than what I believe. And when I say smaller, like I'm at the stage of life now that, and that's one reason why I wrote the book. Like I want to help as many people as I can, you know,
Mhm.
and I know that through stories or storytelling, because I've learned so much because of my clients and the people that I've worked with, you know, and in 18 years, seeing all different type, whether it's victims or individuals who committed the crimes, but I see people for anxiety and depression as well. So I've seen people survive, not just survive, thrive through extremely traumatizing things. And so actually, they've taught me a lot.
Mm. Yeah. So, and let's kind of that's a good jumping off point of what you do currently. So, who do you focus on helping now? Like, do you help anybody that needs some help processing pain, or do you focus in and have a specialty in a few
Right.
areas?
So I am known for sexual behavior and abuse. So I get a lot of cases in regards to that. And then individuals who have sexual behavior issues so I get a lot of, but also trauma, just trauma in general, PTSD. You know, I've had a lot of first responders or people that have been in the military that have had a difficult time. And I know this is completely different because I've had people that have been in prison for 25 years or people that's been in the military for 21 years. And the most difficult thing that I see that they struggle with is the transition
Yeah.
back to somewhat if we want to call it normal life.
Or just a functional life, a healthy life where you can, have, but you've kind of were in a prison mentally for a long time too. So you can kind of, I'm assuming, relate to that forcible transition from getting it from in here. What do I do with it now out? Where do I turn to? One of the things you do that I told you I was going to bring up that I find very unique, and I've never seen anybody do it. Our society is not very forgiving, especially of sexual, I don't want to say predator, people who have had sexual crimes, right? But you help people like that. I find that you're just, I've said this to you before you went on, kind of tongue in cheek, but you're going to get to heaven before I do, because you've turned right around now. And it seems like you've got a place in your heart to help those who have perpetrated things on other people that have happened, kind of like what happened to you. Is that correct?
Yes. And it wasn't my plan, but of course, hindsight looking back and how God has weaved everything together is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a member of ATSA, which is the Association and Treatment of the Prevention of Sexual Abuse. And so all of those people from around the world are top, you know, elite specialists who do all this research about people who have, and we don't even, they don't like to label them sex offenders anymore. It's individuals who have committed sexual crimes, but actually the offense rate is way much lower than what people would believe. And then actually the things that we had in place years ago, the shaming techniques have and the restrictions that we've put up, like you would rather pretty much have a murderer living beside you than someone who has committed a sexual crime. And a lot of the things that we've done in the past actually increase sexual risk instead of actually helping to decrease sexual risk. Because, one part of about whether it's all of us as individuals love connection, and we're meant to like bond and be interdependent, not independent. And we put them in places saying they're so sick that you need to be pretty much monitored and ostracized from the community. So that's not technically rehabilitation. But again, the whole approach is not just no more victims, but a safer society as well. And so that's definitely our goal.
Well, I get to say this out loud and you get to correct me. This is why you're the expert and I'm just the old dude on the street, right? I think, along with when we say, and I'm not politically correct, so I'm going to screw it up, and I don't mean to offend people. When people have committed sex crimes, there's varying degrees of that too. So it's not all things need to be under the same umbrella, or if they are, they need to have their own place. So I have always been the person. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And if we're looking even at the statistics as far as individuals who've committed sexual crimes, actually pedophilia from those individuals is extremely low. I mean, I know, so again, we're putting them under one
Right
umbrella.
Yeah, the 19-year-old that slept with a 17-year-old now
Right.
can, in some states, be under the same umbrella as the person who truly is a psychopath or has true mental issues, and they are a pedophilia
Right.
and so all of a sudden they're both under the same umbrella, and you've got the stigma walking around with that. And I'm not saying either are good, but there are differences. I mean, there's got to be nuanced differences, or that's just the way it is, right?
Right. And then one thing, talking about, social stigma, that we haven't talked about yet, but that is in my book, I did choose to have an abortion at the age of 16. And so how political, that is, pro-life, pro-choice, whatever your belief is, I've never met anyone that's pro-abortion, like, yeah, let's go do one today, like, and so.
Now, you might see those at protests. I've seen them over the last 4 years, but that's usually for drama, politics. That's not real life where it's meeting the road.
But, I do think God has used that in my life because of my own shame associated with that, because it did go against my moral beliefs at the time. And so when we do things that are separate from our the core being of who we are, it really can mess us up, because I'm making a choice. And it was different because yes, I've been sexually abused. I was physically abused. Those were not my choices. This was a choice that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he's used that because of the stigma that you see society put on that, to humble me and make sure that I'm try my best to be non-judgmental in whatever situation it is. And when you really sitting across from someone too, it's been therapeutic sitting across from people who have chosen to sexually harm someone. When you understand their story, you see them more of them in their humanity.
It doesn't mean you justify actions.
Absolutely
It
not.
just you understand more how they got to where they
And then
made that.
can help them,
Yeah.
with the unresolved issues that they possibly or definitely do have in certain areas. But when you get to know them and you've seen them week after week after week, and you know them other than the conviction.
Yeah. I'm going to say this to you, then I'm going to give you the floor to tell people who like your advice. Like, this is what I would do if I were you. If you've been sexually abused or you're experience any kind of trauma, what would their first steps be? I will say this to you: your story is a great reminder that God does not waste pain, and that is, usually the pain, if we're open to it, that we'll go through. And everybody has different levels. You've been through a lot more than most people, but if you'll let God take that, there's people out there that will be blessed by that pain. And I'm not saying it makes it worth it, but what it does is it pulls the healing from. That's how you enjoy life at that point. With this crap that I had to go through, at least now I get to see that I can relate to someone else and help them get better in the moment. I would assume that's how I've experienced, the stuff that I've gone through. God does not waste pain. And again, your story, which is much greater than mine, is a great reminder of that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to get the book too, by the way. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
good. I guess the advice that I would give
Yeah.
someone is, and a lot of people try to wait to move on with their life after the pain, or when the pain goes away, or when they feel better. And I would say take whatever steps you can, even when you are completely full of pain. Um, you know, um, there's, we talk a lot about in, psychology, and there can be toxic positive psychology where it's like, find your passion and and then you're in so much pain. Nobody's feeling passionate right now. I'm
Right.
in complete grief, pain. This is not what I wanted, in my life. But do what you can. Do your best that day. Put in the job applications if you're not working. If you are working, do your best at that job for that day. And then be honest about whatever you're going through. Have that support system. And you can't be honest with everybody, but I mean, you don't want to share, of course.
Yeah.
You don't want to share just any information with anybody, but people that you do have in your life that you can open up to.
That's important, to find that person or those people that are good places for you to just sit and be you. And if that means you need to share something in the moment, that's what you need.
Mm-hmm. And
That's hard to
I
find.
can't remember like what university this speech was given at, but it was some military person that was given a speech, and he basically encourages everybody, if you can't do anything, that don't feel like you can do anything that day, make sure you make your bed. Start by making your bed. And if you don't finish anything else throughout the day, when you come home, well, at least I made my bed. But
Jordan
also,
Peterson says that.
oh, okay, really?
Yeah. Mhm.
But even what we know with psychology, when you do complete, even if it's one step, a lot of times I know I mean, I've never been excited to wash the dishes at all. But
Yeah.
you just gotta, that's what I'm saying. You gotta do some stuff when you feel really bad and sucky. But after you wash the dishes, it's like, yay, well, I've completed something. What else can I do? So a lot of times for people in depression, even if it's like, if brushing your teeth is all you can do that day, brush them and be proud of yourself for brushing your teeth.
Those little small victories add up.
Yes.
They do. Well, let's do this because there's I don't know, huge gaps of your story and lessons you've learned that I left out due to time restraints that I have and stuff we talked about. But if you don't mind, maybe in a couple of weeks, let's revisit it and we'll talk about some of the missing puzzle pieces in there that we can add to kind of complete the conversation.
That sounds really good.
By the way, you did a great job. First podcast, you killed it.
Thank you. How did I sound?
You
though?
sounded like you have a
I want to know.
brand new microphone, by golly. I hope you have a fantastic day, Melissa. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your time and for asking the questions.
Absolutely. Real quick, where do people find out more about you? And if they want to buy the book, is it off a website or how do they find it?
Is Love Just As I Am on Amazon.
Loved Just As I Am on Amazon by Melissa McDaniel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have a great day.
All right. You too.
Bye, everybody.